3D Maleficent acrylic nail art tutorial by Hotpinkzebrapolish.
Hi guys, in today's video I have a realistic Maleficent design, and even though it isn't quite as Halloween-y as some of my other October themed videos, this one is definitely something that could be worn on Halloween, especially if you're going as Maleficent. I love the way it turned out. I hope you guys like it as much as I do, and don't forget to click subscribe to see all my future videos as well.
I'm going to begin with an overlay of a very pretty mossy green color acrylic. So whenever you think of Maleficent, you think of green and purple, at least if you're me. That's just like the iconic Maleficent colors. Even though those aren't necessarily as prevalent with the new live-action Maleficent movies, it still is just one of those things that just screams Maleficent. So I decided to go with a green background to kind of keep with that theory, even though Maleficent, her face itself, doesn't have any of that green hue to it anymore. But after I have that moss green background, I'm going to apply a layer of clear acrylic over the top of it to encase that and make sure that it's nice and strong and protect everything. And then I'm going to be filing the nail into shape with my e-file. I started out with a very coarse bit to remove any bulk and just went over the whole thing and smooth everything out and make sure it looks nice and sleek. I went with an almond shaped nail, so it kind of just lends itself to Maleficent's facial structure. Then I'm going to take white acrylic and I'm going to begin sculpting her face. So when you're doing this, in my mind, I figured her face was the most important element, so I didn't really care if some of her horns weren't visible. But if you do want to make sure her horns are visible, plan ahead for that when you start sculpting her face so that you have room above her head. And as you can see, I kind of carved in a little bit for where her cheekbone is. She's got those beautiful, really rigid cheekbones. So you want to make sure that you sculpt those in. Just kind of get a rough shape of her face in place. Add a little bit more to her forehead. And just keep working on it. Build it up in small layers. For this design, I did more 3D sculpting than I've done in some of my past videos. So there's a lot more detail in the acrylic elements of it. So after as you can see, I kind of sculpted where her eyebrows or her brow bones are, and then I'm going to start building up where her nose is. And like I said, just do this in small little bits at a time so that you don't end up having acrylic that sets before you're ready for it to, and have areas that you have to file off and start over. Just sculpt in her nose, just like that. Kind of work it from side to side until you get the appearance you'd like, adding a little bit more to her chin to sharpen that some. All of her facial features are very sharp, very rigid, so you want to make sure that you sculpt them that way. And then I'm going to start adding her horns with black acrylic. And as you're sculpting her horns, make sure that you're very, very aware of what perspective you're looking at her from. And so in this particular view, she's at like a 3/4 view. And so her horns have a very distinct look from that angle. And if it's not right and you're not sculpting the horns with the right curves in them, the whole design is just going to look a little bit off. So for me, shockingly enough, the most difficult part of this design, as far as something that you really have to be aware of and thinking of, is making sure that the horns are at the right angle. It's such a different, just the way that they curve is so different if you look at them forward from the front or from the side or from, like I said, a 3/4 view. And so that's just something to keep in the back of your mind as you're working on this. Take that little horn headpiece down her forehead and create a point that comes right down and like it extends from her nose. So just take it so it's pointing right down to the point of her nose. And same thing, very rigid, sharp points and angles on her headpiece, just like on her face. Take that down the side of her face, right above or right to the side of where her cheekbones are, and then add the second horn going up and just blend that out. So this black acrylic part doesn't have nearly as much detail as her face does as far as what I sculpted with acrylic. So it's basically just getting the horns in place is all I had to worry about there. And then I'm going to add just a little bit to smooth everything out, a little bit more acrylic. My black acrylic that I had, the first layer I did was just to get that shape down. Like I said, getting the shape of the horns is very crucial. So the second layer is really where I found the roundness of her horns. I'm going to be just continuing to add little bits to smooth that out. And then after you have that part that you're happy with, go ahead and use a little bit of red acrylic and add red for her lips. And because Angelina Jolie has such abundant lips, make sure that you demonstrate that with this little design. Add her lips just like so. And again, they don't have to be too terribly detailed because you can add a lot to them with paint later, but just get them in place. Separate them with the tip of your brush so she has an upper and a lower lip. And it is a little bit difficult to clean up red pigment from the white base of her face, so if your red acrylic does go a little haywire, just keep that in mind. And then I'm going to take and I'm going to sculpt. She's got a little raven skull on the top of her, or in the middle of her headpiece. So you're going to want to just add just that nice little skull. And also you're going to need to add her neck coming down from her head. I missed that part. But then I'm going to take and start doing some painting. So I'm going to be shading in her face with some gray and some black paint. And when you're doing all of this little shading, if you have a color that seems like it's too dark, that if you were to apply it, it would just be too much pigment at one time, you can always dilute your colors and sort of build them up gradually that way. You can also do that if you're using gel paint instead of acrylic paint. There's a lot of ways that you can dilute them. If you want, you can mix them into a little bit of clear top coat or gel sealer to just kind of dilute them so that when they apply, it's not so much pigment all at once. And with acrylic paint, you can just use a little water to dilute them. Shade in her cheekbones, definitely nice, a lot of shading on her cheekbones. Shade in her eyes, around her nose. She's got a very, just like how her face has such sharp features, because of all those sharp features, there's a lot more shadowing than on a more human-esque face. Add her eyebrows with just nice thin little black lines, and then add her lash line, both upper and lower. Give her lots of thick black eyelashes. She's a very glamorous evil fairy. Just add all of those little details on there. From side to side, fill in her eye with just a little swipe of white paint. Do the same thing on the other side. And because of the angle that this is on, there is a slight, her eyes aren't necessarily symmetrical from side to side because of the angle that you're viewing her from. A little bit of white in there. You can always go back and forth with white and black paint and touch things up, and if something goes awry, you can always fix it. So don't be too concerned. Add a little bit of gold and green in her eyes. I used a very metallic gold so that her eyes had some sparkle in them. A little bit of dark green around the outside eye of her irises, and then take some brighter red and some black and add some details to her lips. A little bit more to her eyes. Take some diluted black paint or some diluted gray paint, and add some lines for the folds of her head wrap. So her horns are in this particular outfit she's wearing. They have this black wrapping that goes around them. So you have that little shine from the edges of the wrap. So add diluted gray paint around all of that. Add some white highlights on the raven skull going down, and then do some outlining on those little horns that she has around the head wraps. Just add some black to clean them up a little. A couple black details on that skull. A little bit more on her eyes just to fix anything up where I feel like it needs it. Here and there, not too much. It's so easy to keep adding things here and there because the more you look at it, the more you think that you can fix something on her eyes or her mouth or whatever. You just keep seeing stuff to add. And then once you're all happy with it, go ahead and apply some gel sealer over that really pretty green background. Cure that, then apply some matte top coat over Maleficent. And then take and just put a little bit of gel sealer on her eyes and her lips and cure it again. And you're all done. And stay tuned for a quick little Melody Minutes.
Gonna push your cart?
Are we gonna push your cart? Good job. Oh, did you crash? Oh man.
Hello, Melody.
Good job! You did it!
High five.
Yeah! She has no idea what
Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you like this design, and please share any recreations with me on Facebook or Instagram. I'd love to see them, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!